Day, Cochise County, and welcome to the Michael Zehr Show. Today's date is Friday, April 26th, 2024, and we're streaming to you live from the Rising Eagle Studios here at the Warrior Healing Center in Sierra Vista, Arizona. Today, I have a very special guest veteran, as I do every Friday, but this gentleman sitting to my left here is a highly decorated officer. He served with we'll get into his story, and he can share about how he was served with President Bush, George Bush, the first President Bush, and you were doing what?
I was intelligence advisor.
His intelligence advisor. So he actually knew President Bush. That's amazing. I'm very impressed by that. And I'm very impressed by our guest, and it is retired Colonel Charles Narberg, but you go by Charlie?
It's Narborough.
Narborough.
There's an H on the end, like
There
Edinburgh.
is. Oh, I was pronouncing it like Pittsburgh, but it's Narborough?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. Thank you, sir. So tell us, sir, I know that you were born in New York. You were sharing that with me, and
You're Niagara Falls.
Share with us a little bit about how you ended up going into the Army, of all branches.
By accident. I had no interest in being in the Army, and but I didn't want to be drafted. Since 1965, we're just ramping up in Vietnam. I didn't want to be in the military, and so I tried to enlist in the Air Force, and they wouldn't accept my paperwork. And I tried the Navy, and they wouldn't accept my paperwork. And I said, holy smokes, and I talked to the Army, and he said, oh, yeah, you can be in. And next thing I know, I've got 29 years under my belt doing something I never wanted to do. And I went in as a private and left as a colonel.
Wow. So where did you go to basic training?
Fort Dix, New Jersey.
At Fort Dix?
And then my advanced training was at the Language School of Monterey, California. And then I went to Infantry OCS in Fort Benning, Georgia, and the Intelligence School in Fort Devens, Mass. And then off to a year in Vietnam, which turned into a year and a half because I got an early out if I did that.
Well, share with us, if you would, a little bit, that story you were telling me earlier about going to the Vietnamese to learn the Vietnamese language.
When I finally the recruiter, the Army recruiter, talked me into the language school in Monterey, California, and I thought that would be a pretty good thing to do because it was the Cold War at the time, and so I had very good language skills. And so I signed up for Russian language training, which is about a year of. That's like 4 years of college language training.
And you were enlisted at that time.
I was a private E2 by then.
Yeah.
And but that was like getting the equivalent of 4 years of language training, and then I could get out, go back to college, and study other subject about Russia, and be fully prepared for something maybe in the State Department or the CIA or something else. So that was kind of my plan.
Right. And then somebody approached you and they said, after you were finished with your schooling, how would you like to become an officer?
That's exactly what happened, and but it was because I would no longer be an enlisted man on a 4-year enlistment. I would be a reserve officer with a max of 2 years commission service to go. So I would get out of the Army earlier than I would have in the first place. So that's why I did that.
So when you were approached, you said what, a PV2 at the time? And then you went to OCS school there?
When we graduated, we got promoted to Spec 4. But then I was shipped out right away to Fort Benning, Georgia.
And then what did you do at Fort Benning?
Well, I had acquired a 2-year degree, which is all you needed to get in at that time, and so I went and did that, and got commissioned as a second lieutenant, and and in Army Intelligence, or at the time it was called the Army Security Agency in Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and learned. Well, what we learned there was that this was the mechanics of things that we did, like intercept, voice intercept, and manual Morse intercept, and things like that, which we wouldn't do because that's what the enlisted guys did. And then I went to Vietnam as the operations officer for a ROTC. I have to excuse myself here because
That's okay.
A couple of years ago I had a syncope, syncope, where I fell backwards and hit the back of my head on a concrete floor here in Sierra Vista, and was taken to the Sierra Vista Hospital, and they put me back in the ambulance and took me to Tucson to a trauma center, unconscious, and I'm still recovering from that.
Well, here's just some of the stuff that I have from your biography here. It says that in 1965, Basic Combat Training, Zulu Company, 3rd Basic Combat Training Brigade at Fort Dix. Then in 1966, Vietnamese Language Defense Language Institute. 67, Infantry Officer Candidate School. 54th Company, 5th Battalion, Fort Benning, Georgia, which we were talking about. Then in 1967, Communications Intelligence Officer, Basic Course, United States Army Security Agency, again at Fort Devens. So then in 1972, it says Military Intelligence Officer Advanced Course, United States Army Intelligence Center and School, Fort Huachuca. So I didn't. They were here in '72, weren't they?
We just came out. We just came out, and almost no enlisted guys. They were all still back at Fort Halliburton, packing up the desks and the books and stuff. So if you came in early for the course, you had a paintbrush and you went out and had to paint rocks and clean windows and stuff like that. There was almost nothing here. If you got here early that summer, you lived in a motel or in a trailer, or you commuted to Benson or Tombstone. There was no housing here for us yet.
Right. It was pretty desolate at that time.
Well, the school at Fort Halliburton had a serious problem with that's where the Intel School was at the time, Fort Halliburton, and dependent wives and dependent daughters were being assaulted by thugs out of Baltimore, and the 9th Infantry Division had just left Tacoma, Washington, Fort Lewis in Tacoma, Washington. So the decision was made to move the fort from Fort Halliburton to Tacoma, to Fort Lewis, when Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater says, "No, it's coming to Fort Huachuca." There was a small signal organization here and the experimental field out here, so there was almost nothing else here except roadrunners and cactus pines, and so that's what we came into.
Well, some of your assignments that you shared with me here that I was very, very impressed by. 1967 and 1968, Operations Officer and Executive Officer, 856th Army Security Agency Detachment, 199th Light Infantry Brigade, Republic of Vietnam. So that was when you were there in Vietnam, 67, 68. And let's see, another in 69 to 1971, you were the intelligence advisor to then Ambassador George Bush, who later became president, to the United States Mission to the United Nations, and Special Security Officer, New York City region. So tell us, what was your experience like as a intelligence advisor to the ambassador?
Well, for one thing, I worked almost 7 days a week because I was on call. Of course, we didn't have cell phones then, but I had a thing in my pocket that would buzz every time the ambassador wanted me to see something, because he would have to. I'd have to go back to the UN, and we'd have to go down to my skiff, which was a vaulted, sealed facility that we could talk if he wanted to know something, and because I absolutely refused to talk in his office because he had a lot of visitors there. He could have a bug planted anywhere in his office, So they always had to come down to my office, and the visitors, Chairman of Joint Chiefs Admiral Moore, or Secretary of State Bill Rogers, or all these people, they'd have to come and see me and find out, what was going on somewhere. So it's a pretty important job.
Wow. And then
It was essentially a 7-day-a-week job.
and then in 1974 to 78, United States Army field station in Augsburg, Germany.
Yes.
What was your experience like there?
Well, when I arrived, apparently my record had gotten there before me, and I was almost immediately made a headquarters company commander. That had on my payroll 450 people spread out all over Germany. I was responsible for, and but then I was taken from that. They made me the plans and training officer for the field station. And that was a pretty significant job, because it turns out when I got into looking into that, no one had done anything about plans and training in years. And the original plan said if the Russians come, everybody goes to the airport in Munich, which is going in the direction the Russians were coming from. I said,
Right.
you can't do that. We got to go the other direction. And then there was, of course, there were tunnels outside, or not tunnels, but caves, where you had to go down to where all of the destruction devices were, and nobody knew where the keys were. We had to break into the place to get the destruction devices out, and they were all rotting and unusable. It was and then well, it's kind of a funny story, but I planned a fire drill. There's never been a fire drill in the field station, which was an enormous building,
Okay.
And of course, all the doors are locked and everything else because it's a secret facility. But we'd never had any kind of a fire drill. Nobody would have known where to go, what to do, and so on. So I planned one, and the day we had it, and we had guards at the door to make sure that nobody ran away or got in or things like that. And we had the fire drill, and everybody went outside. And there was a hot air balloon event happening right over, and the Russian balloon was right over top of us. I never heard the end of that one.
Another one that stuck out to me when I was looking over your biography here that you provided, it's beautifully written, by the way. 1983 to 1984, you were the first executive officer to the newly created Deputy Director for Management and Operations, Defense Intelligence Agency at the Pentagon. What was it like going into the Pentagon?
Nice place to work. I enjoy being there, but I can't tell anything about that job.
No, not about the job, but about the area itself. Did you like being in the Washington area? And
no.
You didn't like
I
it
thought
there?
it was too hot and humid, too many bugs, and and I had other opportunities to go back in. I said, I will never go. My daughter lives there. I said, I hate the traffic and the humidity and everything about the place,
But the job that you had there, that was okay, but you just didn't care for the area and stuff then.
Yeah.
Very good. You were also, from 86 to 88, you were the battalion commander and professor of the Military Science ROTC, University of Michigan. Had 48,000 students at Ann Arbor, Michigan, and one of 3 universities in the USA which approved service nominee by appearance before a board of PhDs. That's pretty impressive. What was that like? What was that experience for?
Yeah, there were only 3 or 4 of us in the United States that had to appear in person, because the professors didn't see us as a professor. So I was not a professor of military science at the University of Michigan. I was the chairman of the Army ROTC program. But I had to go back from Korea all the way to Ann Arbor, Michigan to be interviewed, and they thought I was a pretty good guy, and so I got the job.
And then also from 1989 to 1990, U.S. Army Fellow to U.S. Air Force War College, Maxwell Air Force Base, Intelligence Staff Advisor to the Joint Chief of Staff Officer Course Faculty, and CINC, Red Ground Threat, member of Minority Group, which recommended early 1990 a new joint operation exercise portraying an Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, which eventually happened, right?
Yes, I was the Red Threat. There were 2 Army officers there. One was a infantryman, and he was like ground operations, and I was Army Intel, and I could set up some of the exercises and so on. And I had to give classes on intelligence, because most of the most of the students there were pilots, and we had to do that. But then one day, here's where my memory fails me. Who was the sink of CENTCOM at the time? General, famous general. But he ran the thing, and he
Wasn't Schwarzkopf?
Yes.
General Schwarzkopf?
Yeah, so he comes in one day, and we're all put in a room, and and all of the generals and senior colonels that were going to be participating in Desert Storm were our students. And so we went over, and we spent a lot of time just standing at a map because most of them knew nothing about Iraq or any other stuff. So we were giving one-on-one classes to these people who are about to go be in senior positions during the thing, you know.
And then it says from 1990 forward, you were the Chief Security Plans and Operations Division, Office of the Deputy Chief of Staff Intelligence, 7th Army, Heidelberg, Germany. So you went back to Germany again.
Yes. I was the SPO, Senior Plans and Training Officer there. And then when it was about a year later, there was a colonel over at Central CENTCOM in NATO in Heidelberg, and he was relieved, and General Crosby Saint brought me in to head that up. So I was like the deputy for CENTCOM. The commander was a German, and I had a Canadian on my staff, and I had German soldiers on my staff, and I had 3 or 4 U.S. Army majors on my staff, and we did all. And the main thing we were doing at that time was making sure that the Warsaw Pact was in fact withdrawing and leaving and packing up and getting out of before the wall came down.
Wow. And out of all of the different assignments that you've had, which have been numerous, all the different duty stations that you've been to, what was your favorite place to go to? What was your favorite duty station?
I think I would have to say Fort Huachuca.
Fort Huachuca, really?
Because we kept coming back here and watching it change. We came here Sierra Vista ended at 7th Street.
Yes, sir, it did.
Where Lawley Ford is and all that stuff. That's where the high school is, and it was out of town. Kids were bused there.
Yeah.
And you could drive from about, the mall was just going up when we came back in 1999, and you could drive all the way to Bisbee and never see a light anywhere in sight, because there was nothing there. Now it's a big place, 4-lane roads and everything else. It's a big change. But the weather here is, I've lived all over the world, and the weather here on a year-long basis is about as good as it gets. It's never really cold. It's never really hot. So we've always enjoyed it here.
My wife got here in '69 because her dad is enlisted, retired master sergeant, and she told me that Fry Boulevard was a dirt road, and it would go down and, like you said, end at 7th Street, another dirt road back then in the day. It's just hard to imagine the town being that.
Well, I could take it back even further because the road that we call the Route 90 bypass that goes around Sierra Vista. Mm-hmm. Years ago, back in the 1800s, there was just a dirt road there from where the fort is all the way out to where I live in Ranchos Carmela Estates, and it had a sole purpose. We found out from doing historical information that way out there, not far from where I live now, was the cemetery where they buried smallpox victims.
Oh, wow!
And that's the only thing that went out there was the dead people being taken out and buried there. And so when that was found out, just several years ago, it was a little more than several years ago. I remember when they discovered that because over the years, villages were just popped up across the street, and then there was a drainage ditch along that eventually went under the bypass and emptied into the land out where this smallpox cemetery was, and so
Wow.
so they had to get that all patched up and fixed up, and so
See, I love westerns and stuff, and I know going back, I haven't done a whole lot of research, but I definitely have to do more now. You piqued my curiosity of the westerns and when the Buffalo Soldiers used to be here at Fort Huachuca, and used to be how it was at that time an outpost and helping to control the what are they called, Native American people now. So anyhow, yeah, it's just it fascinates
there
me.
is a lot of history here. A lot
lot.
of people don't know, and we've got a really great museum here.
We do.
And they have people will take you through the museum, or you can go on up on Lookout Point, and that's where the soldiers went and built a fire and got wet blankets and signaled the infantry guys that had gone all the way over to Chiricahua Mountains and so on. And there's one of my favorite pictures on the wall in the museum is the bandmaster in the 1800s and his family and his son, who used to play on the parade ground when he was a kid, was Fiorello LaGuardia, future mayor of New York City.
Wow.
And LaGuardia Airport is named after him.
Yeah, holy cow.
And he played Cowboys and Indians on the parade field.
So some of your citations that I'm reading here that you received are the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Army Meritorious Service Medal, 4 clusters. Is that how I'm reading that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Joint Service Commendation Medal, Valorous Unit Award, Army Staff Identification Badge, and several service and campaign awards for duties in Vietnam, Germany, and Korea. And then didn't you also share with me that you were also part of the planning of when we went to war with Iraq? I thought you had said something about that.
I wasn't involved in planning at that time in Heidelberg. I was kind of like overseeing the movement of what they anticipated would be needed intelligence supplies, what kind of equipment they would need, what kind of units they would need, and so on, which turned out to include my own son. Was in the back seat of the Mohawk airplane flying along the border, scanning for what was on the other side. That was pretty nice. In fact, I'll tell a quick story. More story is that my wife would say, "Where's my son? I want to know where my son is." Oh, he's sitting in some tea house in Kuwait City somewhere, and so on. And so when the Desert Storm was over, I called his battalion commander. I said, "Did I get you everything you needed?" He said, "Yes, sir. That's great. Thank you very much." I said, "Well, I want you to do a favor for me because the Mohawk airplane can't be taken apart. The wings don't come off and stuff like that. It has to be flown all the way back." I said, "Could you put my son on one of those planes, at least as far as Wiesbaden, Germany, so I can have a reunion with him and my daughter and my wife and so on?" He said, "Yes, sir. I can do that." So we sent him up. And so when we went out to dinner at a German restaurant, and one time in the conversation, he says, "Oh, Dad, the day that we crossed into Iraq," and my wife said, "What?" And she got up and she walked out of the restaurant, And my son said, "What's that?" And I told her. He said, "Well, I'll go talk to her." I said, "No, I know your mother better than you do." And she came back in and she put her hand in my hand and said, "You did the right thing. A mother would not want to know that her son had gone into a battle zone."
Right.
So, sure, I made that one.
So speaking of that, we have a photograph, don't we, of you actually enlisting your son into the military?
And pinning his wings on when he
Pinning his wings
got
on.
to Fort Huachuca.
Can we see it? You got it handy here, right?
Which one?
The one where you're pinning the wings on your son?
Oh, it's a pretty beaten up.
So this is some of the passes that he had when he was U.S. delegation. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but when he was up at the U.S. delegate up at the United Nations right here.
Yeah, that's
pretty cool.
It's kind of hard to see.
Right here. And then this is a picture of him pinning his wings onto his son. Right there. Very cool. Very cool. So, talking about your family, can you share with us a little bit about that? You said that you have a son, a daughter. How long were you married?
How long were we married? I married her I met her in New York City. In fact, it was we were at a function at the U.S. Mission to the UN when Barbara Bush came over to talk to me and my wife, got introduced to my wife, and she says, my husband George talks about your man all the time. Don't let him go. So she talked my future bride into being my bride. Yeah. So we were friends for many years.
So you got married to Joanna,
Yeah.
and it said that she studied French.
She was fluent in French. She also knew Spanish. She was taught English at USIS in Caracas, Venezuela.
Yeah.
She was one of the very first
Peace Corps volunteers.
Peace Corps volunteers served
neat.
in the Philippines, where she contracted amoebic dysentery, which affected her most of her life. So we always had to have a van with a porta potty in it because we never knew when she was going to need it.
And let's see, son Charles.
He's adopted.
Oh.
It didn't appear we were going to have. Apparently, I had some kind of problems myself, although the VA hasn't yet to approve it. That we had ended up adopting him as he was almost 7, and we didn't know anything about him. But he turned out to be a really good guy, and he's married to a Canadian now, lives in Canada. He's involved in law enforcement up there, and. We know sort of the ink was still drying on his adoption papers when my wife finally conceived our daughter.
Isn't it amazing, though, how many people that serve in the military end up in law enforcement of one form or another? It's amazing.
I don't know.
Yeah. And then you have a daughter, Catherine Elizabeth?
Yes, she's our pride and joy. She was valedictorian of her high school class, cum laude, Duke University, John Fisher. She's just recently promoted to a very, very senior position, number 2 person in an office of the U.S. State Department in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And she has 2 sons just like her. They're both teenagers now. The oldest one started the 9th grade this past year, but not in his high school. He's in a what's the place in Massachusetts? This is where my memory, because of my syncope, I lose track of what I was going to say. But he's in an engineering school.
Okay.
In the 9th grade. And they both.
Is it MIT?
That's what I was trying to think of, was MIT.
Yeah.
But it's at that kind of a school.
Okay.
But he's in it as a 9th grader. And he and his younger brother both speak French and Spanish. When they were babies, when they were small, and my wife and her husband works in the Department of Agriculture, and they had a nanny that would come and look after our boys, her boys, and some friends' kids. And she was a Mexican American, and they said, whatever you do, never speak to these kids in English. Always speak to them in Spanish. And by the time that they were going to kindergarten, they already knew Spanish.
Wow, that's amazing.
And the school they're in is a total French immersion. So everything, even in music and gym, is in French as long as they've been there. So, and they've done a lot of traveling. They've been all over France. They've been to Quebec in Canada and so on. So they're really smart boys. And so
and the last thing I wanted to segue into real quick here before we end, and I wanted to ask you about your service in Vietnam. We were talking about your experiences with the VA and how you haven't felt like you were treated very well there, and you've had quite a few conditions that are Agent Orange related.
That's a proven fact.
Yeah.
But when I retired in Germany in 1982.
Right.
And got a job. It was kind of funny because my wife said, well, where are we going to go now? The Army's not, you've been served. The Army's not going to tell us where to go anymore. We're looking at maps of Florida and California and that kind of Arizona. And one night I came home and she said, I've got an idea. Everywhere we've been in the Army, it's just like being somewhere in the United States. You got PTA, you got ballet, you got football, soccer, and all that other stuff. She said, their son's gone and our daughter's leaving. Let's stay in Europe. We haven't seen it yet. And so that's why we ended up staying there. I got a job. I got a job as a defense contractor, where I was actually making more money than I made as a as an Army colonel, and we traveled, a lot. We traveled all over in my job, and so on. So we really enjoyed doing that.
One of the things I wanted to stress, though, and I'm so glad that you shared your story about that, is that we have quite a few veterans, for one reason or another, that just don't want to go take the time to deal with the health care and the VA and stuff like that.
I haven't heard a good thing about VA yet.
Well, it's very important if you feel that you're a Vietnam veteran and you haven't filed a claim. Being exposed to Agent Orange, you need to get that done. Don't wait till the
that's
the
all.
last
I've
minute.
done all that. I did all
you
that
have,
over
right.
a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we have to peel it.
I talked to the doctor over here at the local VA, and about how slow things go. And she's, well, how long have you been working on getting up to speed on all this stuff? And I told her, and I said, well, it's been over a year. She said, oh, you're just getting started. And I've talked to a lot of people that are in the VA. Said it's, in fact, most of. I'll tell you one good thing that has happened to me, because other people told me the VA isn't going to help you very much. Go to the DVA, the disabled veterans, which have a little office in the backside of Cochise College over on Wilcox. And I went over there, and they sat me down, and they got on the computer, and I sat right down and typed out all the paperwork that I needed to get into VA and so on. And he's now considered by VA as my sponsor, I guess, and so on. But we did that in like less than 2 hours at least.
Right.
That the VA hadn't done for me since I started going there.
Right.
And that's been kind of frustrating. And then slowly, and then they've got this organization, QTC, is that what it's called?
Well, they're the ones that do the examinations for the
No,
VA?
they don't. No, they don't.
Is that the one you're talking about?
No, what they do is they're hired by VA to find places to go and people to see.
Right.
And they told me right up front, they said, you can't go to your military hospital, you can't go to your town hospital, you can't go to your family doctor. You have to go where we tell you to go, which it turns out is the lowest paid person or event that they can find to send you to.
Mm-hmm.
And I get stuff from them that's just totally contrary to anything that I told them or what I've said. It's just been very, very frustrating with this QTC thing. And just last week, 2 weeks ago, they sent me a flyer that said I had to go to Tucson to get a chest x-ray. I said, I can walk to a place right here in town and get a chest x-ray and use my TRICARE to pay for it and so on. I said, no, that's where you have to go to do it. And so we went up to, I had to, because of my syncope, I had to give a driver to drive me up there. We drove all the way up there. We found a place. We went, and they said, we're not doing x-rays this week. I said, why didn't you call me and tell me? And they said, because we didn't know you were coming. This is an open facility. And anybody that's got a document from a doctor or somebody else to come here to get an x-ray, you just come at your leisure, sit in the waiting room until we call you, and we'll do the x-ray and you can go home. But we don't schedule. So they sent you without telling us that they were sending you. That's why we didn't tell you not to come. And that's the kind of thing I run into.
That's frustrating, yeah. I get you. Everybody has a little bit. I mean, they have gotten a lot better, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done yet. So, and in closing, one other thing I just want to share real quick, some of your hobbies that you shared, that you're into model railroading, that you like to do gardening and carpentry. What kind of carpentry?
Well, I can't do it anymore since
okay.
my back, my scoliosis and so on. I haven't been doing a lot of gardening much either, but I do cook a lot. And
you like to cook?
Yeah,
you won men. Yeah, that's right. You showed me that certificate when you won Men Who Cook 2018.
Well, before I was in the Army, I was working as a meat cutter, and I learned to do meat cutting.
Uh-huh.
So my wife was an incredible cook, and my daughter is an incredible cook. But she would show me a picture in a magazine or a cookbook or something. Say, go find this piece of meat or fish or bird, whatever it was, and make So I would do that, and I'd tie it up, wrap it, whatever she wanted to do. She said, "That's great. Now get out of my kitchen." So I used to do the burgers on the grill, or I'd make breakfast sometimes on Sunday mornings. So when she suddenly died, we were getting ready to go to a funeral, and she sat down beside the bed to take a pill. I won't mention the name of it, for arthritis pain. And she says, we got to talk about what we're going to do on Valentine's Day. And I said, well, I'll be right back. I'm going downstairs, get a second cup of coffee. And I came back upstairs, and her glass of water was on the floor, and she was on her back, and she was dead. And the cat was on top of her, licking her face and so on. Oh. So that was 20 years ago. So wow. I was just 59 then, and next month I'm going to be 80.
Wow.
And then when I finally got my own personal taste of what veterans have been going through, I just knew them as wounded people. I didn't know the frustrations that they deal with on a regular basis. Things not getting taken care of. I've got an oxygen tank with me here today that my son and daughter paid for, almost $4,000 for a portable oxygen.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
And so on. And the people that I've seen at the Army pharmacy that have a similar thing. And they said, no, you've got the deluxe model. He says, ours are good for like maybe 4 hours. And the one that you've got is good for maybe up to 8 hours. So I said, so I have to thank my son and daughter for giving me that, And I've got it with me today. I don't wear it unless I suddenly, think I need oxygen. But that's one of those Murphy's Law things, If you don't have it with you, you're going to wish you did,
Well, Colonel, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down and sharing your story.
Well, it's my pleasure.
With us.
I'm just something I can do to help you out here. If you got, people talk to, because I've told, when I was teaching at the University of Michigan, and I tell the students about my experiences in the Army, for example, with West Pointers, not knocking West Pointers, but they want a particular kind of job, or they want, it's like that. And I've known other people, I said, I always took the job I was given, and it was usually not a very good job, and had a bad reputation. So, and make it better, and that's what a good officer should be doing.
Well, again, I appreciate you coming in and sharing your story with us, and it's.
Well, I hope I can do something to help you out, or talk to people, because I know I've talked to some vets that needed a talking to, or needed somebody to listen to them. And I'm hoping I can help you out a little bit. I'm not doing anything else.
Great. So some upcoming events that we have coming here at the Warrior Healing Center, starting on Monday, 29th of April, starting at 1700 hours and going to 1830 hours. We have the Tai Chi and Qigong class at 1730 to 1900 hours. We have the Bible Discovery Group, and the Bible Discovery Group takes place at the Warrior Healing Center's Military Library, also on Monday, April 29th, starting at 1800 hours, going to I always mess this up, 2000 hours. I always mess it up. Kathy gives me such, she teases me all the time about it, but I believe it's 2,000 hours. Oh, Lord, have mercy. We have the Legal and Finance Seminar, and this week it's going to be on Estate and Contingency Planning 101 that will be taking place here at the Warrior Healing Center main conference room. I think what it was, I used to say 2,000 hours when it's 2,000
Unfortunately, Monday night, the 29th, at that same time, I'm part of a group that is organized that we are reworking the City Hall concept into a new kind of program. It's a selected group of people that come together to sit down and figure out how we're going to do this.
Oh, wow. On Tuesday, 30th of April, starting at 1000 hours, going to 1130 hours, we have the Vet Center Vietnam Veterans Recovery and Support Group that takes place here at the Warrior Healing Center's main conference room. Tuesday, April 30th, starting at 1200 hours, going to 1400 hours, is Tasty Tuesday that is taking place over at the BFW Post 9972. Tuesday, 30th of April, starting at 1700 hours, going to 2100 hours. Now, why did I say 2,000 hours then? Oh, geez. I'm stuck on that now. Karaoke and appetizers will be taking place at the American Legion Post 52. On Wednesday, May 1st, Velo Vets will be doing their group ride. It starts at 08:30. They meet at the Pueblo del Sol Country Club parking lot. They're also on Wednesday, starting at 10:30, going to 11:30. It's Finding the Way, the Warrior Healing Bible study that will be taking place in the Warrior Healing Center's main library. On Thursday, May 2nd, we have, starting at 1700 hours, going to 1830 hours, we have the Flutes for Vets Circle that takes place right here at the Warrior Healing Center. Thursday, we also have, starting at 1700 hours, going to 1900 hours, we have a taco night taking place at the American Legion Post 24 in Tombstone. And on Friday, we have, starting at 0900 going to 1030 hours, we have the Takeoff Pound Sensibly that meets right here at the Warrior Healing Center's main conference room. And also on Thursday nights, every Thursday night, we have the Headspace and Timing that takes place right here at the Warrior Healing Center. And that starts at 1830 and goes to 1930 hours.
What is that?
It's a support group, like a PTSD support group for veterans. And we also have one that meets Saturday mornings here at 9:30 at the center as well. So there's a lot of activities, a lot of good stuff that's happening here. We've got the Fun Food Friday coming up next Friday, I believe, a week from today. Let me double check my calendar. Pretty sure, yep. Friday, May 3rd. So that's starts at 11 o'clock, goes to, I believe, 1400 hours. And they provide a really nice lunch for veterans and their families. And it doesn't cost anybody any money. Just come on in and have a good time, some good food. So,
well, now that you kind of know me, that's something that you think I'd be particularly valuable at doing. I'd be free to call on me.
We would love to have you around here anytime, sir.
I just realized something when I'm wearing today, Northern Arizona University sweatshirt.
That's okay.
Which is next week will be my 50th year since I was at NAU. And the reason I was there, when I was in here in 1972, 73, in the intelligence school, as one of the first classes that we had out here, every Friday we didn't even have a good building for secret stuff to take place. We were in a Quonset hut thing. And every Friday night when we left, we'd take our chair and put it on top of the table. And over the weekend, somebody that had a security clearance could go in there and sweep the floor and things like that. And we would come back in on Monday morning, and we'd look around, and there'd be 1, 2, maybe 3 chairs still up on the table because we were going through another reduction in force.
Wow.
And people all over the weekend would get a pink slip that they don't bother coming back on Monday. And so that was going on. And then one day a major came in to get everybody's attention. He said, does anybody here have 2 years of college that wants to complete a bachelor's degree? And there were like 4 or 5 of us raised our hands, and the Army sent us to college. And some of my classmates went to Tucson, some went to Phoenix. I went to NAU in Flagstaff, and that was kind of interesting because the course I went into, this is 1973, 74. I signed up to go into a program for computer science. The class of mine was the first class, computer science. 5 of us in the class.
Wow.
That's how new computer science was.
Yeah.
And we didn't have desktops, we didn't have laptops, we didn't have any of that stuff. You had to punch cards and then put them into a big computer. So, and then, and I was such a good student that some 20 years later, 10 years, whatever it was, that I was a battalion commander in Korea. I got a note from NAU, asked if I would contribute money to the student fund or something like that. And they said, as one of our top all-time 200 students, we appreciate. I said, what? So anyway, his 50th anniversary is next week, and I can't go because I can't drive up there. So
Wow.
I didn't know anybody there anyway because it was such a small place.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Well, anything I can do to help you all out here, please let me know. I'll be more
Yes,
happy
sir.
to do that.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Once a soldier, always a soldier.
Yeah. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. I'll see you next Friday. Have a great weekend, everybody.